After studying this module, you shall be able to know the meaning of organizational conflict, identify the various types of organizational conflict, learn what are the sources of organizational conflict, evaluate the consequences of various types of organizational conflict. In this module, we shall study about organizational conflict. Organizational conflict is the result of incompatible potential relationships. The process begins when one party perceives that another party has impeded or will frustrate one or more of its concerns. Jordan, 1991. Rahim, 2000, defined conflict as a natural outcome of human interaction which begins when one individual perceives that his or her goals, attitudes, values, or beliefs are incongruent with those of another individual. This incompatibility can arise within an individual, between two individuals, or between groups of individuals. Organizational conflict is the discord that arises when goals, interests, or values of different individuals or groups are incompatible and those people block or thwart each other's efforts to achieve their objectives. Conflict is inevitable given the wide range of goals for the different stakeholders in the organization. Let us now discuss the positive effects of organizational conflict. Organizational conflict might be considered as a concept having only negative attached to it, but the truth is it has its positives too. The positive outcomes of organizational conflict are as follows. Release of tension. Organizational conflict gives a chance to the members of a group to release their tension which otherwise would have remained suppressed in the hearts of all and lead to decrease in their efficiency. Creativity. In order to resolve the organizational conflict, the members of the group display innovation and creativity by thinking of new and alternative ideas which otherwise would not have come to the forefront. Stimulation of change. Organizational conflicts gives way to change. Identification of weaknesses. An organizational conflict usually unveils the weaknesses in the system. Group cohesiveness. Inter-group conflict promotes group cohesiveness as all members of one group stand together against the other. Moving on to the dysfunctions of organizational conflict. The negative outcomes of organizational conflict can paralyze the organization. Following are the negative aspects of organizational conflict. Resignation of personnel. In case of interpersonal and intrapersonal conflict, individuals resign from the organization in case not a fruitful resolve is reached. This harms the organization. Tensions. Negative environment is created in the organization which leads to anxiety, frustration among the members, and that in turn lead to decrease in efficiency, productivity, and profitability. This also leads to increase in wastage, spoilage, absenteeism. Discontentment. Individuals working in the organizations who lose in the organizational conflict feel very discontent if the resolution is not in their favor and look for an opportunity to settle scores with the winning party. Creation of distrust. Once there is a conflict between two parties, it becomes difficult to create trust between the two parties. Distrust leads to negative feeling and lack of cooperation. Goal displacement. Employees lose sight of the organizational conflict and concentrate on finding tactics to come out as winners in the conflict. Weakening of organization. If management is not able to handle the organizational conflict, it might take a disastrous shape and harm the organization. Management of organizational conflict is important for the health of organization. Organizational conflict leads to tension and ultimately resignation of employees, which weakens the organization. Types of conflict. Intrapersonal conflict. Conflict within an individual is thought to arise from the person's goals or roles. This kind of conflict arises when a person's individual conflict does not match with the organizational goals, or the individual has more than one goal and those goals do not synchronize with each other. Role conflict arises when an individual has more than one roles and those roles are not compatible with each other. For example, a mother working in an organization has an important meeting lined up for a day, and that very day her 1-year-old daughter is very ill. Now her role as an employee demands her to attend to her work, and on the other hand, her role as a mother demands her to attend to her daughter. Interpersonal conflict. Conflict between individuals due to differences in their goals or values. For example, conflict between a supervisor and a subordinate can be termed as interpersonal conflict. A supervisor wants to increase the productivity and for that sets difficult targets for subordinates, while subordinate does not know about the organizational targets, hence feels the targets set for him are unreasonable. Intra-group conflict. Conflict within a group or team. In a group, when a conflict arises between the different members of the group, it can be termed as intra-group conflict. Inter-group conflict. Conflict between different groups in the organization are known as inter-group conflict. For example, conflict between production team and marketing team. Now we shall move on to the sources of conflict. Incompatible goals and time horizons. Different groups have different goals and focus. An individual having two different goals which might conflict with each other, or goal of individual conflicting with organizational goal also leads to conflict. Overlapping authority. Two or more managers claim authority for the same activities, which leads to conflict between the managers and workers. Task interdependencies. One member of a group or a group fails to finish a task that another member or group depends on, causing the waiting worker or group to fall behind. Example, a car before finishing goes to many hands on a conveyor belt. A performs a certain task, then it comes to B, who in turn performs other functions, and so if A does not finish his task in time, B will also not be able to finish his task in time. Thus, this usually happens in case of sequential interdependencies. Incompatible evaluation or reward system. A group is rewarded for achieving a goal, but another interdependent group is rewarded for achieving a goal that conflicts with the first group. Scarce resources. Managers can come into conflict over the allocation of scarce resources. Example, if one team is provided less resource in comparison to another team to perform the same function, it can lead to conflict. Status inconsistencies. Some individuals and groups have a higher organizational status than others, leading to conflict with lower status groups. For example, a conflict between management and trade union member may only take place because of difference in status. Now we will discuss the levels or stages of conflict. Conflict has the following stages. Latent conflict. At this stage, conflict is not apparent. It occurs in the subconscious mind. Perceived conflict. At this stage, substantial or emotional differences are sensed. 3. Felt conflict. At this stage, conflict is felt in the form of tension, and at this stage, this tension creates motivation to act. 4th, manifest conflict. Conflict can be seen in behaviors like pen aggression, apathy, sabotage, withdrawal, etc. Conflict aftermath. The conflict may have positive or negative aftermath. If the conflict is resolved properly, then the result will be cooperative relationships and creativity, while if the conflict is only suppressed, then it can re-emerge and lead to catastrophic repercussions. Finally, we will understand the approaches to conflict. Traditional approach to conflict. Classical writers view conflict as bad due to the very many adverse effects attached to it. They believe that conflict leads to tension, negative environment, and hence reduce the productivity of the organization as individuals do not cooperate with each other. The efficiency of the organization reduces. Thus, for traditional viewpoint of conflict considers conflict negatively. Modern approach to conflict. This approach is also known as an interactionist view of conflict. According to this viewpoint, conflict is not only positive force in a group, but is also necessary for a group to perform effectively. This approach is based on the fact that peaceful group is prone to become static and non-responsive to the need of change. Conflict increases innovation and creativity. Thus, conflict should not be totally avoided but should be kept under control. Now we shall recapitulate what we have learnt so far. Organizational conflict is the discord that arises when goals, interests, or values of different individuals or groups are incompatible, and those people block or thwart each other's efforts to achieve their objectives. Organizational conflict has both positive and negative effects. Organizational conflict can be of various types: intrapersonal, interpersonal, intragroup, and intergroup. Organizational conflict can be caused due to incompatible goals and time horizons, overlapping authority, task interdependencies, incompatible evaluation or reward system, scarce resources, and status inconsistencies. Conflict has 5 stages, namely latent, perceived, felt, manifest, and conflict aftermath. There are 2 approaches to conflict, namely traditional and modern.